Hello, everyone. Welcome to Adobe Live. I am Benjamin Ward. I'm a product manager on the Lightroom team. And today I am hosting Margaret Albaugh, fantastic photographer. We will be taking a look at her work and her workflow, and I will turn this show over to her in just a moment. But first, let me say just a few things. If you are watching our live stream on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. But you might want to consider watching on Behance, because on Behance, we have live chat. So you can say hello to the other people who are viewing this stream. You can ask questions of Margaret during the presentation. I will be monitoring the chat on Behance, and so any questions I see come in there, I will relay to Margaret. And to watch on Behance, that is be.net/Adobe Live. So join us there if you want to join in the conversation. And then be sure to check out the first week of Photoshop Daily Creative Challenge replays every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific. Don't miss out on this new set of challenges. Let's see here. Margaret today is going to be showing us her documentary family work. And I'm going to let her speak a little bit more to specifically what that means, but we will get to see her kind of go through her full workflow of editing a shoot of photos. Margaret, I'm going to turn it over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you'll be showing us today?
Yeah, thanks so much. So I do documentary family work, which essentially means that I am invited into somebody's home where I get to document their family, usually for the whole day, but sometimes it's for maybe a half day. It just depends on what the family wants. So today we're going to be looking at a day in the life I did a couple of weeks ago for a family in Canada.
And I'll just interject really quickly to say, if you see me looking down here, I'm looking at my other screen so that I can follow along in the chat. And I see a lot of people have joined us already, and I'm kind of scrolling back. Hello, Jan. Jan is a rebel and is watching us on Vimeo. I didn't even know that was a thing. I mean, I know Vimeo is a thing, but I didn't even know we broadcast on Vimeo. And who else do we have here? Hello, Sean. Hello, Vikram. Hello, Umakorn. All right, thank you everybody for joining us today.
Yeah, excited to have everybody and talk about documentary family work. My portfolio doesn't want to load today. But normally I would do documentary family work. Sometimes families still want traditional lifestyle portraits though. And I also do personal projects on the side. All right. So we will bring in the catalog from that day. And I'm just going to spend a little bit of time going through what the culling process might look like for me. And so you can see the whole day, I've got about 2,500 photos from the one day. And we don't want to deliver the full 2,500 photos. So we're going to try to find a way to cull the images that I think are going to be most representative of the family and what's meaningful to them. And I'm also keeping in mind that tomorrow I'm going to be working on their slideshow. So I'm also going to look at the images that I might like to have on for their slideshow. What I'm going to use today, normally I do a star ranking system, but for today, just to kind of show you, I'll use the labeling system. Actually, no, I'll continue with the star ranking system and I'll just do 2 stars.
And Margaret, can you tell us a little bit about the tools that you're using? It looks like you do this process in Bridge, is that correct?
Yes. Bridge for me is just a little bit more intuitive. I can understand the directory system a little bit better than in Lightroom, which is why I chose to work with Bridge and Photoshop. And that's just where I ended up starting to, so that's probably why. But I think when choosing between Bridge and Photoshop versus a Lightroom system, it just depends on which one is gonna make more sense to you and which one fulfills your needs a little bit better. So for me, I go with Bridge.
And Sean asks, is Bridge still around? Look, alive and kicking. Here it is. Yes.
Yes, it's still around. That's hilarious. All right. So these are just some kind of introductory shots that give a little bit of a spotlight to where the family is at right now in their life. So for me, photographing like the playroom was really important. And these little notes on the walls were really important. And so I just do Control-2 when I click on them, and that helps to star them so that I don't have to go through any kind of, otherwise you could go into here, you could do a label, or you could click them here. But I just find doing Control-2, or I imagine on Apple it'd be Command-2, helps to really quickly get through the process. And then something else that I'll do a lot of times is, I'm going to grab that one too. I'll pull out and get a wider look and grab a bunch. And then throw on a Command or Control-2 when I've gotten enough that I like.
And do you typically, when you're going through your culling process like this, are you typically looking at them just kind of at thumbnail size here, or do you find sometimes you need to kind of step in and see them larger? How does that work when you're selecting your photos?
Yeah, that's a good question. Usually I do a large cull in the beginning, and I will, I'll grab a whole bunch that I think speak to me. So usually about this size, because then I can see what the entirety of one scene might look like. So like this whole putting away dishes scene. And I have an idea for what every image looks like, but I'll probably grab more than one. So like, I like the framing here. I like that the faucet isn't in the way. But I also like how they're kind of passing by each other in this one. So I'll grab that one. I kind of like the movement of the shapes in this one.
If it were me, I would need to be worrying about whether these were actually in focus, but maybe you don't have that problem.
I think that's a very legit concern. And if I'm worried about it, what I'll do is I will take a whole look at the scene, and I'll give it a quick pass through to see if there's any that I really just need to throw out. So I'll scroll through them, and so far it looks like they're pretty good. And then, let's see, I might grab, I like this one too. There's some of the shapes in that one. So then I've got a couple that I've grabbed from this cleaning dishes scene, and it doesn't mean that I'm going to deliver all of them, but I will be able to at least pick one or two that I like that can either, that I'll be delivering, and maybe I'll make it into the slideshow. I don't know yet. And then I've got some from this kind of little nuzzling waking up scene. And I probably shot this on burst mode. So then I was able to get a little bit of him getting really close, and then some where, you know, he's not quite cuddled in all the way. So I like those.
And do you have a system for like what the number of stars mean? Like, does 1 star mean something, and 2 stars mean something else? And
usually the 1 star is my first pass through. And I'm just doing 2 stars right now because some already have 1 stars on them. I created a duplicate folder that was just for this, but I wanted to also show the process of the first call. So that's why sometimes you might see some that have already been looked at. All right, so I've got, let me see how many I've got for this little morning snuzzle. So I've got a few that I like. And then here's the mom waking up the other daughter. Let me just make them a little bit bigger. And then I just use control so that I can select multiple at a time. Right, so select those. And then I shot a little bit wider to try and get both sisters in the frame and both parents.
And Margaret, there's a question. Is there a particular way you'd like to handle questions? Is it okay if I just kind of interject during pauses?
Oh, yeah.
Or okay. There's a question from the chat from Sean asking, what camera and setup are you using for this type of shoot? And then Sean was noticing that the ISO was 6400 and just kind of wondering about your settings.
Yeah, so let's take a look. I shoot with a Sony A9, 35 millimeter lens. I think it's a 1.8 lens. And then I usually will try to keep the ISO the same in a room. So it was pretty dark at this point because it was a cloudy, overcast day. So that's probably why you see it at 6400 f2.2. So I'm pretty wide open, and the shutter speed isn't too fast. So you can tell it's pretty dark in the room still. Hopefully that was enough to answer the question. Sometimes I keep a backup Nikon on me as well, but I find that the silent shutter of the mirrorless cameras are really nice for the day in the lives, because then you can move pretty quietly while they're doing, these little silent moments like the waking up or the bedtimes, times where maybe if somebody's sad, you don't want like a really loud shutter around them, because that sometimes happens.
A really good point. I hadn't thought about that. It's almost like wildlife photography.
Yeah.
You just want to be as unobtrusive as possible, right?
Yeah. All right. So I can see your face in this frame, so I'm going to grab that one. Whereas in the other ones, the corner is kind of blocking. And I was backed up into the corner, and to kind of get this framing, I had the camera up kind of high. So there was a little bit difficult for me to see the screen and to see if I was grabbing, getting their faces in. I was trying. Usually I try a couple different angles too, so that I've got a variety to choose from and can kind of play out, what works best for that scene. I kind of like that I can see her little face peeking through just a little bit. And so the dad's talking to the oldest daughter, trying to get her up. I like that one. He's kind of using the big squishy to squish her and be playful with her. I had a mentor who told me that I have a tendency to cut off heads. So I'm trying to be a little bit cognizant of that. I like that one.
Is that I'm curious, and I'm not like making a joke. I'm like asking, like, is there, how much of that, like, do you consider that a mistake and something you want to move away from? How much of that kind of thing is like actual personal style, or,
yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely think that's my personal style. Is I really like to have an intimate feel for my images. And then, and I think sometimes, my main focus here is more her expression than the mom's, but I like this one feels a little bit more balanced to me. This one feels a little bit too much. I'm getting a little bit too close to her eyes right there. The stuffy takes up most of the frame, so it feels a little bit more imbalanced. And then I don't really like that as much. But I definitely think that for me, that's part of my style, I like to do a lot of just a little bit closer, a little bit more intimate, and sometimes just a little bit more anonymity.
And I'm sure we'll learn about this when we get to the editing portion of what you're doing today, but do you find that you crop a lot, or is that something you avoid? Do you ever crop in to get a tighter or more intimate feel, or you go with sort of in camera?
Yeah, I try to get the feel a little bit more in camera. I'll crop if maybe, maybe I've got an image that I like, but maybe there's a little bit extra space on one side, like, where is it? Like when the dad is waking up the oldest daughter here. So I've got a lot of extra space here. So I might crop that in later. I don't know. But otherwise I try to get that in more, and you can see I've got the top of his head off, but that's just kind of my style. And I feel like, I think it's kind of how I see things sometimes too. Just kind of perceive the world. A lot of chopped off heads. So, yeah. I like her expressions in these. I'm looking for like mom and daughter's expressions. And then mom said, "Hey, your turn to scratch mine." So she's kind of laughing at the thought of that. And then she kind of goes, "Okay, let's do this."
And what do you eventually deliver to the families? And let me give some context for my question. I'm looking at here and I'm wondering, do you try to sort of tell a story or show kind of full sequences of things? And what does the family get? Do they get a book or?
Good question. Yeah. So when you'll see later for the slideshow that I really tried to have kind of a consistent, I guess, storyline throughout. So I've got these like intro photos that I took in the beginning that kind of introduce us to the home and the family. And those will go at the beginning of the sequence for my slideshow. And I'll probably still deliver those to the family. I doubt the family will ever print them, but maybe those will be things that they really enjoy in the slideshow, or maybe just things that they, maybe in 10 or 15 years, they'll look back on those images and see those little mementos and it'll mean something to them. But I don't photograph those with the intention of them going on a wall, kind of a thing. So it's more for the slideshow and just kind of a way, if they decide to get an album, it might go in an album as a way to bring details into the story for them. And then with the actual images that get delivered, what I find is usually my clients here really want the digital packages. So usually they'll purchase a session and then everything is purchased a la carte. So then they can buy one image as a digital if they want, or 10, or the full gallery. Usually it's the full gallery, and then they can add things on like albums and prints. And I do give like a discount if they buy the full gallery of digitals, then they get I think 25% off for the album if they decide to add that on. Maybe it's 20%. I'll have to double check.
And there's a question from Bruce in the chat asking about depth of field on the camera that you use. And I was wondering the same thing, actually, like looking at the pictures of dad here and child in the background. It looks like you have a number of shots where you have people at different depths. And how does the camera handle that? How do you handle that? Do you let one of them drop out of focus? I don't know anything.
Yeah, I really try to be cognizant of where the layers are placed in the image, because if there's a pretty wide distance, if somebody is really close to me and the other person is significantly far, then you're going to get a lot of blur with that front layer. or if you're focused on the front person, then whoever is behind them is definitely going to be not in focus. They're going to be probably a blob. So you want to be aware of what that, what those different distances are, and then adjust your settings accordingly. So I think like here I'm at f2.2. And then when I saw them, I wanted to close down a little bit, and I switched to 2.8 just so he didn't become too much of a blob in the front. And then I try to incorporate layers whenever I can, just because it helps add more depth to the story of the image. So hopefully that answered the question. These are nice, just details of the room. They give a lot of atmosphere. So that would be something I might put in a slideshow or into an album. Let's see, these are funny to me because they're watching the chickens at the neighbor's house. Probably grab one of each. One with like them come where she's just you can see her just a little bit, and then here you can see more of her shadow. So the shadow one is really interesting to me. And then kind of chatting about the morning, mommy multitasking. So I'll grab those. I like this interaction here. And then once I do my initial pass, then I actually start editing them in Camera Raw. And that's where I'll make my final selects. So then I'll see them on a large screen and can take a look and see which ones I'm actually going to keep and which ones I'll deselect them.
I think everybody's super excited to see the editing process. That's what people are always most interested in. But before we move to that, let me ask you, I'm curious, looking at these photos, it looks like your subjects are very comfortable. And I'm wondering if you have a particular techniques that you employ to make your subjects feel at ease when you're taking pictures?
That's a good question. I think it's definitely a specific clientele that seeks me out. There are people who, they don't care if they look picture perfect. They're not looking for that. They're looking for something that really they can look back on and evoke memory and remind them of who they are at this time. And just they're not interested in, I guess, like upholding any type of like image around who they are. So in general, they're probably in life, they're probably going to be more like that too. And so it's usually those families who seek me out, and they know going into it, after looking at my portfolio, after having a talk with me, because I usually try and have a phone chat with every one of my prospective clients to really help them understand what it is that I do. Then they get a good understanding of what I do, and they're much more, that helps prepare them to be relaxed during the session. And I think that, even though it's documentary, I think there's always an awareness that somebody has a camera. And I think I was just talking to another photographer friend about this the other day, that even though we're documentary, there's still this, it's not necessarily a performance, but it's an awareness that somebody's there. And there's this expectation that a picture is being taken. So even though I would say all my clients are pretty relaxed and as much themselves as they can be, there's always that awareness there that I think it's really hard to shut off. Also, it helps that this client is herself a documentary photographer too.
So she wanted to be in the photos for once.
Yes, yeah. Let's see. So I'll probably just do some of these breakfast photos, and then I'll show you the culled down grouping that I've got, and we'll look at batch editing them. I like the look the mom is giving here. It's like such a parental look. Hold on. Okay, so I'll show you the grouping I've got, and we'll take a look at batch editing. All right, so I pulled them into a separate folder, the ones that I had selected earlier, and we'll take a look at batch editing them. So these are all kind of in the same light quality. So I'm going to batch edit those together. And depending on what you want to do, so I have a pre-made preset that I use. I think I like this one better, but I'm going to change the exposure on them. So I'll throw the preset on in the beginning on all of them. And that helps kind of establish a similar color quality and contrast and tone throughout all of them so that it's consistent. And then I'll go through each image and just kind of make edits to the individual images as needed. So like this one, I don't like that I could see the edges here. So I'm actually going to crop this one. And I'll probably crop from the bottom in and just get rid of that. That's a little bit better. And I might go in a little bit further, but for now I'll leave that. Actually, yeah, I will just go in a little bit further. And I'll get rid of the bottom of the rug. It centers the window and the house better, and it gets rid of that chair. And then I like that a little bit better.
There's a great question from Vikram asking, how do you plan or decide what photos to take? Is this a very spontaneous kind of thing for you, or do you have, doesn't really feel like you have a shot list going in, but do you have like in mind ideas of what you want to capture, or how does it work?
I usually chat with all my clients about the phase of life they're in. So I know a little bit about the family, like how old their kids are, what the kids are into, maybe a little bit more about their personality. I know that this family has just lost their dog earlier this year, and that, you know, they were all really heartbroken about it. He still plays a very important role in their lives. So I wanted to make sure that the images and that the slideshow later pays homage to him. I know that the youngest daughter is really artistic and she's into chickens. So I want to make sure that there's something in here that reflects that. And the oldest daughter loves to write and loves to read. So I tried to pay attention to that, although I don't know that I have images of her reading in this particular set. All right, so I've looked at those. I cropped this one a little bit. I might bring the exposure up on this one a little. Actually, bring the exposure up on that. Oh, I didn't know all of Photoshop closed. So I'll bring the exposure up on that one a little bit, and I'll crop it. Just center that a little bit better, and it gets rid of that edge. All right. kind of like this in black and white, but I also really love the morning tones coming in through there. So I'll probably bring the exposure up on that a little bit. And then I want to crop in just a little. So that gets rid of that extra space and then it balances out the image a little bit better. All right, and then we'll look at all the morning snuggles. Depending on my mood, I guess, sometimes I'll look at, like right now, this is only 16 images. So sometimes I'll look at as many as 30 in one batch. And that's just to help speed things along. But I want to make sure that I'm looking at each thing kind of scene by scene for you guys so that you can see what that looks like. Like keeps the white balance consistent. It's really important later on, especially when you've got color casts, because then you really want to make sure that you keep that color consistency going with each image. I really like that one. I'll probably get rid of this one. So I'm going to deselect that star. And then I'll bring up exposure on these two. And I might even convert this one to black and white. Take a look. This is a black and white preset I made. I just like that. It gives me some pretty true blacks. I'm going to bring up the highlights a little bit on that. All right. All right. I think these two will work well together. And this one's kind of a nice way to break up the scenes so that if the three different, the scene here with daddy and the youngest, and then the scene here with mommy and the oldest, adding in this scene helps just to break up that perspective, because otherwise it's kind of similar perspectives, and this helps give a little bit of breadth. So far, I like the color on that. I might just add on a brush of, that might be a little bit too much. And then crop it in just a little. This one's tricky because I don't want to cut off too much of the head, but I also don't like right now, I like that you can see a bit of his arm, because otherwise it might look a little funny if I just take it all off, but let's take a look. Okay, that actually worked all right. I think I'll get rid of that one.
And when you get rid of, are you just unstarring it, or
yeah?
Okay. And for anybody who's just joined us recently, we are here today with photographer Margaret Albaugh, who is showing us her workflow for culling and editing photos from a day in the life family portraiture shoot. If you have any questions, you can submit them in the chat pod on Behance, be.net/Adobe Live. I think I've got that right.
So of these three, I like the tension of this one as she's right about to rub her mom's back. And then I like this one because I can see more of mom's expression and I can see her hand poking out of there. And those are just little details that I think add to the story. So I'm going to get rid of this one and just unstar it. This one's just a cute little decompression mode. I might see how this looks in black and white. Kind of like that. I'm gonna bring the highlights up in that a little bit. I'm gonna take a look at the curve. Oops. More. Just bring the overall exposure on that. All right. And I have some more. Oh, I should have grabbed these two. To make sure I keep the consistency, I'll grab one of the ones I've already done. And then I'll sync it to that one. Go. So you can see that these are the different settings that I'm syncing. So if there's any that you maybe like, if I had changed the geometry on this one, I probably wouldn't want to apply that to all of them. So I would deselect it. I'm good with all of that. So and that way it applies the preset and the exposure settings. That way, I don't have to worry too much about changing the exposure on each one of these because it looks pretty good now. I might bring down this one just a little bit because that back window brings in a lot of light. All right. Now we'll move on to the kitchen scene. Let's see how many we've got. Just want to see if there's any more. Okay. So I'll look at these.
Is 20, you mentioned earlier you have about 2,500 photos that you took for this shoot. Is that pretty typical of the amount of pictures you'll end up with?
Yeah, I think for me, 2,500 to 3,500 for one day is pretty typical. I think some people will shoot a lot more and some people a lot less, and that just depends also on the family themselves, what they're doing. If there's a lot of different activities throughout the day or different, I would refer to them as scenes because it may not necessarily be activities that they're doing, but just different places that they're in. You might take a whole lot more images. And then if there may be a kind of a slower, not really slower, but just like a low-key family, then you might take less. And it's not less necessarily better or worse. It just is, you know, each family has kind of their different vibe. And so it's photographing to make sure that you photograph for their family. And so I don't ever promise a set number to them because I don't think that really does anybody justice. It doesn't do them justice or me, because I don't want to make them feel they have to do more or be interesting, quote unquote interesting. And then I don't have to be thinking to myself, oh, I have to like photograph more. And I don't want to deliver any images that I don't think are like excellent quality. So then I don't feel like I have to hit a certain amount or deliver a certain amount. Then it gives me a little bit of freedom to make sure that I'm focused for every session.
And this process that you're showing us now, the process we saw earlier where you were culling down to selects and then this process of editing, how long does that usually, how much time do you usually spend on that for a typical shoot?
Let's see, for a typical full day, I would say 1 to 2 hours. Probably 2 hours, yeah, to go through the process of looking through the whole day. It might be longer than that, but
I was gonna say that sounds. I mean, you're a pro. That sounds so fast to me. I'm so slow, but I'm not a pro. So
it might be longer than that, but I enjoy the process of pulling, so then it goes pretty fast. So the lighting here is pretty yellow, so I'm gonna keep it that way, and leave the color cast there. Like you can tell out the window, it's kind of a grayish morning, so that color makes sense. So I don't want to play too much with the temperature here. I really like the way the mom is framed here by the doorway, and she's framed here by the cabinets. So that worked well. And then I just love her expressions here. So for these three, if I'm gonna choose, I would probably get rid of this one. And that way I've got, you know, this is my beginning of that moment, and this is the end of that moment. And so far everything looks pretty good. So I'll be done with that scene. And so I think what I'll do is I'll grab more than just each scene so you can kind of see how that looks. They went on a hike, so I'll grab some of the hiking photos in this one. And it just allows me to go a little bit faster. Selected that too early. All right. I'm going to bring the exposure up on this one a little bit so I can see your face a little better. But I don't want to blow it out. So I might just brighten up her face just a little bit. I don't know if you can tell. Okay.
So you were doing local editing right there, is that right? With the adjustment brush?
Yeah.
And do you find you do a lot of that, very little of that? How much does that figure into your editing?
I guess I think it really depends on the scene and the settings, because here she's kind of in a darker corner and she's facing away from the light, so she's not getting much light on her face there. There's a scene later where they're all playing games, and I think I do use the brush a little bit more in that because everybody's looking down, the light is coming from above. So just to make sure their faces are a little bit more visible, I do use the brush a little bit more there. I kind of want to adjust the tilt just a little here. Bring down the exposure overall in that one. That one looks good the way it is. And I just go through each one to make sure each one looks good. Bring the exposure down just a little. This one, I don't know why, but I accidentally bumped my ISO pretty high. And I really have no idea why. I think because I wanted to have more detail. So I bumped my aperture to 4.5. I probably didn't need 500th of a second though. So I probably could have brought the ISO and shutter speed down, but it is what it is. I love just the triangle this makes, and I might try this in black and white. And we're going to bring the exposure down. And I will look at the details and just have a little noise reduction. And I'm using her cheek right now because that's where I see a lot of the noise. I think that looks good right there. All right. So I've got these three that are in the exact same spot. Just going to bring the exposure up a little bit here. And I like I'm going to try these in black and white as well.
That photo is either, excuse me, I need to take a call, or we're lost in the woods.
That is we are lost in the woods. Need to sort this out, which way to go. Yeah. So they were trying to find the trail that leads to a creek, I believe. And I'm just looking at her face here and how the highlights are. And so I just brought down the exposure a little bit, but that means his face got a little bit lost in the shadows. So I want to bring that up a little, but not too much. Let's see if we can bring up shadows just a touch. And we'll leave it at that. Maybe just a little bit on here. This is the carry me to point. There's so much detail, just so much going on in the background that I worry they'll get lost in it. But maybe there's enough contrast between them and the background that black and white still works. So I'll try that one. And then I like this one as a moment that could work really well in black and white too. All right. Then I'm going to grab one of these ones we just did and the next set of forest images. Let's see how many more are there. All right. And we'll do all those. And we'll just sync it to that image. I'm going to bring up the exposure on this just a little. I like here that each person kind of has their own space within the frame. It feels really balanced. Let's see, here's a quick portrait that I grabbed of their oldest. And this one is a little dark. And actually, I think the next few are going to be dark. I'm going to take a look. So I'm just going to bring that up a little bit. Or a lot of it. I don't know yet. I like that one so far. I like the shape that they make, their hands and their bodies. Don't know if I want to crop in because it feels like there's a lot of space here. All right. I think that works for me. Quick portrait I grabbed. So I do want to try something. Adding, so with my preset, it adds kind of a global contrast to everything. So I'm going to take a little bit of the global contrast and clarity away from the background and just see what kind of effect that has. Okay. I'm going to take a look at how much that covers. And then I'm going to take away some of that. Make the size a little bit smaller though. This is definitely not as accurate if you were to pull it into Photoshop and do it as layers. But I'm hoping that this will still look okay and not be too obvious. I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit and make sure it doesn't look too obvious anywhere. The way I did the mask. Okay, I think it looks all right. And then you can see how it looked before and then after. And so it just brightens up the background a little bit, but also takes away some of the heavy contrast. Yeah, I think that works for me. So with them at the bottom here, you can see that their faces are a little bit stretched. So I'm going back to global adjustments. Now look at the distortion on it. Usually I find that with the 35mm and -7 is about a good range for me. Let's see. Go back to 0 and just.
And do you have I missed this if you already showed this, do you have the lens profile applied here already as well, or is that not something you use?
I didn't apply the lens profile on this one. And I think I just like to have a little bit more manual control, so that's why I don't.
Oh, and looking at that, it looks like that Sony and lens combo you're using already has a built-in profile anyway. So, okay, some cameras do.
All right, and then I'll bring it exposure just a little bit. Okay, and I don't know why that looks very pink to me. Let me take a look. So for whatever reason, my white balance didn't carry all the way through. So I'm just gonna make sure that does. All right, and then we'll take a look at that again. All right, that's a little bit better. Brighten that up just a little bit. I like the leading line the mom creates there. And I've got a few here where the oldest daughter came up and gave mom a hug on the back. But mom was not feeling so great about where she was at the time when she got that hug. I'm gonna switch tab to black and white. And then, let's see, the clarity is really heavy on this, which can make for a very, just for a lot of busyness. Just feels really heavy on that.
And was that part of your, sorry, was that part of your preset, or was that an edit you had done earlier? Okay, it's part of your preset.
Yep.
Okay. And the presets that you've been using as your starting point, these are presets that you made yourself.
Yeah, I do have other presets that I've bought that I use a lot for like my personal family work. I use it as a starting point for those. But for doc work, I try not to do too much to them. So it's mostly like a contrast and a little bit of color enhancement. So like a little bit of vibrancy. All right, And then I kind of want to bring the contrast and texture down a little bit on the background and maybe make it a little bit darker just so. Just so it doesn't feel so busy. All right, let's see where that is. And then if you press Alt, it changes your brush to an eraser brush, so you can remove it. And I'll take off the mask and see how that looks. I really try to be cognizant of the halos, and right now it looks pretty good. I don't see any. All right, I'm just making sure that the subjects are bright enough. Just seeing for anything that might be missing, but it looks pretty good. I'm probably going a little bit slower than I normally would, because normally I might, I wouldn't be narrating everything, so then I would probably just zip through a little bit faster. But I'm trying to make sure that I am sharing my thought process. Let's see if I just tone down the contrast and clarity in the background. So again, I'm just pressing that Alt key as I do this, and that turns it into an eraser tool. And we'll take off the mask. There is a little bit of elongation because they're at the edges of my frame. So I might, yeah, let's take a look at the distortion. I don't want to lose too much of the mom of her face, so I probably won't go as much as I did before. And here you can see she's at the very corner, so there's a lot more distortion there. So I'm just going to bring that. I don't want to lose the daughter's forehead. So it's not perfect, but it's a little bit better. And kind of like the idea of black and white for this one. I think I just lost my distortion though. So I'll keep it there. And I'll go back with that brush in the background, and it's really subtle. But I feel like overall, you don't have to have an extreme brush just to get a really nice effect there. And then I'll paint her back in. Okay. Just wondering if I, whoops, want to brighten him a little bit. Okay, like that. They do look very stretched, but I think I'm personally okay with it. Let's just see how it looks if I just, okay, we'll just leave it at that. Up the exposure on that. And that could serve as a nice portrait. Let me see. I prefer it in color or black and white.
And again, during a quiet moment here, I'll just chime in to say for anybody who's joined us recently, We're talking to Margaret Albaugh, who's showing us her workflow for doing an edit of a 2,500 photo shoot of a kind of day in the life family portraiture here.
Yeah, it is very much like shooting a wedding in some ways. Because, you know, you're going to shoot a lot. I would say the biggest difference is there's not a script. You know, I don't know. With a wedding, there's the ceremony and then and the party and the dancing. So you kind of have an idea of what everything's going to look like through your day. I think the challenging thing with family documentary is you just never really know, because the family is going to call the shots kind of the way, you know, they would on any day. That a little bit. Let's see. I really like the graphic nature of this one. Kind of want to add a little bit more saturation. Just a touch. I usually use the vibrant slider because I find it's a little bit more subtle. But here I'll add just a little saturation and maybe a little bit of an exposure adjustment, just a touch. And I think one of these I want to switch to black and white. It just has a nostalgic feel to it of being by the river with your dad and skipping rocks. Just want to make sure I can see a little bit of her face, like the highlights on her face. And that just gives a little bit more depth to her without adding too much of an exposure change around her. Let's see if I should do the same for the rest. Here we go. Let's see, I think I made the other one black and white, so I'll leave this one in color. Oh, you know what? Maybe I will do this one in black and white, because I like them both. They have different feel to it, but I really don't like that red hat. So I could crop it in, or I could just, I like the space to it though. So I'm gonna.
Would you ever just heal something like that out, or does that kind of get in the way of the integrity of the imagery?
I could. It's a pretty easy fix to pull it into Photoshop. So I can, and then I can show you guys how to do that. Yeah,
you could even do that in ACR if it was something simple like that, I think.
Yeah, and I don't usually do that. I wouldn't usually do that for a family session. I think it just depends. Like if this was a red hat and, you know, maybe it's right here and it's an image I want to keep in color, then I probably would just do a quick Photoshop on it. But since I've got two options here, dang, I really like this one in black and white. Then I might do that then and just see how it is. All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll just tag this one with a different star rating as one to look back at later and see if I want to keep it in color and maybe just get rid of that hat. there is, some discussion, I think, in the community of the doc family community about, at what point do you manipulate an image like that in that kind of way? Or how much do you manipulate a scene? And that's really just up to the photographer. You just want to make sure that you're transparent about that, though, if you ever enter contests, things like that. Because if a contest says don't do that, then you obviously don't want to enter those images that have been manipulated. And you adhere to whatever the rules are of the documentary genre.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, in most cases, my own philosophical view is you're a photographer, you get to do whatever you want. But of course, there's an element. I mean, this isn't journalism, but there is an element of that to what you're doing here. So it might be a little bit different in this case.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't, this isn't going to be for AP News. This is just for a family. So then you're doing this work. You want to make it, you want your primary client and the person that you want to please is going to be the family. So, on that note, like you could absolutely go ahead and do whatever you need to do to make the image the best for the family. I think for me, I do the best I can in shoot. So I was aware of him. You'll see. Okay, actually, you'll see it here. I was aware of him. I was like, oh, he's in my photo again. So I moved to get him out of the photo, and I ended up liking the framing of the image here. And it's something that makes me work harder to be cognizant of these things so that I don't have to even consider photoshopping him. But then I can kind of, I guess, adhere to this idea of like a more stricter documentary feel. But I wouldn't, I think it's entirely up to the artist what they want to do.
There's a question from Bruce. You mentioned that you knew this family, and you also mentioned earlier that most of your business comes word of mouth, but are there other things that you do to get business? Do you advertise on social media or anything along those lines?
Oh, Bruce, that's a really good question. I have done stuff on social media to try and get more clients. I find that many of my clients, the ones that I think really love this kind of work, aren't that active on social media. So I find it to be a little bit futile, but you can, I do know that some people do get work from social media, and I think it just depends on where you are. I'm here in Eastern Washington, which I think, I just don't think most of my clientele are that busy on social media, so they probably wouldn't even care what I post. But if I were, say, in Seattle, where it's much busier, I think that the clientele there are maybe a little bit more active on social media because, I think it just matches with the space that you're in, because you just have to be a little bit more active than doing social media marketing works a little bit better. So it's part of knowing your surroundings, knowing your clientele and what the culture is like for each city. Because it's different everywhere. You just never really know. And so for me, word of mouth has been best for me here. I think also documentary work is so niche that if you're if you're trying to draw somebody to a newer form of work of genre, they're probably going to be more attracted to you as the photographer and as the brand more than they're willing to risk trying something new out, if that makes sense. All right, so I think I'm done with that scene. I also want to be cognizant of time because
we have about 45 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I'll show how to batch save them. It's really easy.
And I'll give you a heads up when we have about 15 minutes left. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. Just so you can make sure to fit in anything you wanted to be sure to get to.
Mm-hmm. Come on. I think I've been using this one pretty regularly, so I'm just going to stick with that. I can tell that some of these are kind of dark and it's almost a little too saturated in some of these, but maybe it's just this one that feels a bit heavy. I'm actually going to look at the colors on this one. And if I bring up, oops. Bring up the reds and oranges just a little bit. And bring down the saturation, the reds and oranges. That helps a little bit. Trying to decide if I want to do this in black and white just because I love the shapes here, the composition of the family. Yeah, I'll do that. I'm gonna brighten it up just a little bit. Okay.
How long have you been doing this work, Margaret?
I remember trying to break into Doc Family a long time ago. I didn't even know what it was called. I just knew that I wanted to photograph people as, you know, doing day-to-day stuff. And then I probably officially started marketing myself as Doc Family maybe 10 years ago. But it was tough. My husband's military, so we've moved a couple of times throughout that time. And then it's just been hard, I guess, like having a consistency throughout the years as Doc Fam. So there have been times where I've really had to ask myself, do I just want to be doing Doc Family work? Do I want to make sure that there's other avenues for, you know, income and for doing work? And so I have done, I do lifestyle portraits for families as well. And then headshots and small branding for businesses, things like that. Branding for small business, sorry.
I was wondering if you've had, I mean, it sounds like you've been doing it long enough for this to have happened, although maybe if you're moving around, this doesn't happen. I was wondering if you get repeat business from people who want, like, you documented us at this phase of our life and now it's 5 years later and we want you to do it again, or does that ever happen? Or?
Yeah. I would say about half my clients are repeat. It's kind of hard to say right now though, because we've been here in Spokane about 5 years. And so there's definitely I have repeat clients who, you know, maybe 1 year will do lifestyle and the next year or a couple of years later, they'll want to do a doc session. So that has happened. I have one client who has hired me, I think 5 times in 2 years, because I also do adoption ceremonies and go to the court and document the court process. And so they had a courtroom adoption. They've also welcomed 2 babies, and both through surrogacy. And then they also had one of the adopted kids is in need of heart surgery. So I've also adopted his process of going to the doctors and, you know, his heart journey. That's
a heavy responsibility.
Yeah. But I loved that the mom wanted to do that for him, because she knew that someday he could look back on that and say, like, this is what I've been through and this is what I've been able to overcome. And there are times where, you know, she's told me about times where he's been running around and his oxygen dips incredibly low, that they've had to like stop him, and sometimes they've gone to the doctor. So it's been a lot for them to do and to handle. Trying to decide if I want this in color or black and white. Love her little eyes here. I'm not quite sure if she's looking at me or eyeing a peach or what. I think it's really sweet. I'm just gonna burn down this foreground a little bit.
And there was a question earlier, and I apologize because this was pretty far back in the chat, so I don't remember who asked this at this point. But somebody asked about your hardware and kind of what kind of PC you use. I find myself wondering when I'm looking at you doing this work here about other stuff too, like input. Do you use a stylus for this work that you're doing with the brush, or is this all mouse, or can you speak to any of that?
Yeah, I used to have a bamboo stylus that I loved working on, and then it broke. But I mean, I think that thing lasted like 8 years. So it was, you know, it did its job, and it went through 2 moves with me, and so it lived a good long life. And it was like one of the earliest bamboo models, I think. At least for me, it felt like it was one of the earliest, because I don't remember too many people having bamboo at that time. So now I'm back to using a mouse, because I haven't, it's so overwhelming now, like how many different styluses there are, that I just have no idea what to get. So if anybody has recommendations, feel free to send them to me, because I don't know now what to get. So I haven't replaced it, and I'm just using a mouse.
I totally don't have the answer to that question, but some kind of Wacom tablet, right? Because they're a Washington-based company, and you're in Washington, right? So there you go, some kind of Wacom.
Somebody will help me out here. So now I'm just on a mouse, and I use a PC that my husband did a custom build with. All right. See, I have 3 of them hugging outside of this store, so I don't know that I need all 3. Normally I would do like, you know, this one has a lot of scenery and foreground and depth to it, so then I might do like one without, but I really like this one too. So I think I'll probably get rid of this one. And I might try this with black and white. And I bring all the highlights all the way down so that I can get some of these details back and get her head outline back. All right. I hope she's not watching me, because I had a little surprise in terms of the slideshow for their family.
Oh, the family might be in the audience.
Yeah,
Speak up if you're here. Speak up in the chat.
I don't think she is, but yeah. They wrote a little poem about the family. So that's one of the images. And then the daughter loves to play with the chickens next door. So I did take a photograph of one of them. Normally, I would try to get down lower and have a couple of different perspectives of a scene like this, but I'm also very aware that I'm not always the best at like hanging on to my the camera strap, and so I just really basically I didn't want to like put my face in chicken poo. So I don't have as many perspectives of this as I would like.
You know, certain sacrifices are required of you.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
I don't know if putting your face in chicken poo is one, so but
I'm not against it. See, I'm just gonna bring down the exposure here. All right. I've kind of gotten to a point where I'm not really thinking about the scenes that I'm grabbing, and I'm just grabbing like a clutch of like 20 or so, which is how I would normally edit, but it makes a lot of sense if you can grab like one scene at a time and do it all. So here it's all like I don't really want to edit, you know, this one bathroom scene in 2 different batches because I want to make sure there's consistency. I'm gonna bring up the exposure on this a little bit. This one too. All right, so I'm looking at the color cast and just making sure that this white balance is accurate, and you know, looking at the background where I can see the daylight, it looks like it's just a strong yellow light. I want to at least match one of the lines to try to get up vertical, and I'm trying to decide if I want to, and depending on the image, if it really bothered me, I would throw it into Photoshop and transform and play around with the image, but I just don't want to do too much of that.
As a Lightroom product manager, I also feel I have to say that you could do that in Lightroom or ACR here as well, probably, right? Using the geometry tools.
Yeah. Yes, you can do that.
That's just for those of you in the audience who are who don't want to have to jump into Photoshop.
Yeah. So like you can do that kind of stuff here, which is really nice. Trying to decide how much it bugs me though. I think for today, I think I'm okay with it. And I might bring the temperature down just a little bit. Okay, I'm good with that. All right, so here we're in the bathroom scene. I just want to see how the color looks in each of them. Okay. All right. So I like having like the most center, you know, vertical lines to be vertical. So I like that. And I think the color quality is fairly true to how the bathroom light actually looked. So I'm going to leave that. I'm going to bring the exposure down on this. She was just correcting like some kind of mistake in the haircut he had gotten.
I feel like this is a scene that many of us might be able to relate to. A year and a half into a global pandemic.
Yes. All Right.
My wife cut my hair once at the beginning of the pandemic and then said it was too much pressure for her. I'm like, what do you mean? The worst case scenario is we shave it all up and it grows back in like 3 weeks. But so I've done it myself since then.
So you were willing to take the risk, and she didn't want that pressure.
It didn't bother me. Yeah, no, it's too
Yeah.
much pressure. Too much pressure for her.
I think I like that one better than this one, so I'm gonna get rid of this one. And I'm gonna use this as an intro shot when we do the slideshow later. I'm gonna go through these now and see which ones I want to hang on to and which ones I don't. Kind of like this one. I love this little detail of her finger right here. Like here, this is where you want to fix things. And I'm gonna have a couple of these in black and white. I'm going to highlight up just a little in the curves. And then I might match that. I just love that little detail of the hairs. I think I'm going to sync that as well. And I love this little hand gesture. I'm going to have that black and white as well. I'll have this one black and white too. Okay, so those are done. And then she does her daughter's haircut next.
That's more pressure for sure.
Yeah. There's a lot of expectations on that. All right. That's correct. I'm just going to correct the vertical. And I think in black and white that would look pretty nice. But I've lost her a little bit too much in the shadows, so I'm going to bring her up. Here we go. I really like the ability to change the size of both the brush and the feather when I'm using this brush tool. I had like, I think I had initially selected like quite a few of these first cut images, and I liked this one because of her facial expression here. Let's see. I'm trying to see. I think some of these might look pretty good in black and white too, but I'm not sure which. Well, I can tell that the white balance has changed a little bit, so I'm gonna sync that again. And what probably happened is my white balance changed in camera because I think I keep that on auto white balance. So I'll just sync it here. I don't know if that did anything. All right, there we go. Let's see. There's so much, I feel like there's so much emotion in her whole posture that this works really well in black and white. All right, so then those bathroom scenes are done. And then the kitchen and dining room have similar light quality. Let's see, know that there's a lot that needs to be done in these. I want to be aware of, like, when I'm doing this overall exposure, it's brightening these lit white walls and white counter as well. And it can maybe be too much, so I might bring that back down and just do an adjustment brush on them. Oh, that's better. I think for now I'll leave this one in color. It's just a little bit easier to tell what they're working on, especially the girl in the front. Those details get a little bit lost because the color informs so much here.
And just for the record here, since I've been quiet for a moment, the entire chat has devolved into a conversation about haircuts. So, we're not even talking about photography anymore. It's just haircuts. So.
That's how meaningful it's become this year, huh?
Right. Yeah, if anybody has any questions about photography for Margaret, put them in the chat. I'll relay your questions. We don't have to just talk about haircuts.
I definitely have images where I'm cutting my husband's hair and I've cut my kids' hair.
Yeah, do you find, what's it like for you photographing your own family?
Good question. You know, they're at an age now, they're at 6 and 9. And so it's been interesting. I still do some documentary images of them, but they've become a little bit more aware of the camera. So sometimes they're either performing a little bit, they'll kind of ham it up a little bit more. I love this hand gesture right here. So I'm trying to decide if color or black and white works better for this. But I've also hired our own day in the life as well. And that's been nice. I think my kids are pretty used to it and are fairly comfortable with the camera around.
It's a little bit like haircutting. It's hard to do your own day in the life photo session, right? You have to get somebody else to do it. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. I don't know if I want to crop Dad's hand out or not. It doesn't really do anything for me. All the stuff that's happening is right here. It's a fun moment. So I'll probably do the same thing. I remember trying to kind of reach over a little bit more so that I could center frame them better. And that just was, I was just having a hard time getting to where I wanted to be for that. I feel like I have a lot of extra space that it's not doing really anything. So I'll cut that out. There's more conversation of the hair at the dinner table. I remember cutting my own hair during the pandemic. Okay, I think I like these. I don't need those two, and I'll just keep this one. That little sliver on the side is kind of annoying, so I'm going to get rid of that. Bring it down just a little bit more. And I only need one of those.
I love the expressions in that one.
There's a lot happening with each one of them.
And Margaret, just a heads up, we have 15 minutes left.
All right. So I'll save some of the ones that we've got then. Okay. Let's see, where did I stop? Okay. So normally what I would do is I would select Normally I would select all of them, but I'll just select a good big chunk. We'll go up to Tools, Photoshop, and Image Processor. And here in the Image Processor, I can decide where I'm going to save these. And it'll create a JPEG folder in here. I'm going to save these as JPEG, quality 12. I want to make sure that the profiles are sRGB, which I'm pretty sure they already are, but just in case, I will check that as well. If you want to, you can resize to fit images to certain dimensions, but I don't want to do that. And I think we're good to go. And then I will just run that and it opens up Photoshop and saves them automatically into JPEG for me. So I don't have to go through and do that. And this is probably boring to watch. So, but
well, so I'll use this opportunity to say, Margaret, you'll be back here with us tomorrow as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about what you'll be covering when you're here tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to put these images into the slideshow so you guys can see how I do that. I make a really simple title for the slideshow. I'll be adding music to it, which I've already licensed. And I'll be adding in some audio clip as well.
And sorry, what tools do you use for making the slideshow?
Premiere Pro.
Okay.
Yeah, and I might clean up some of the audio in Audition, and then I think that's it. Yeah.
And then that slideshow is one of the deliverables that you would give to the family.
Yeah, so normally I would use the slideshow as kind of essentially like a quick way to see all their images, rather than just sending them a gallery and asking if they want it, which I do have clients who actually specifically ask for me to just send them a digital gallery, because maybe they're too busy to do IPS with me. But I try to do IPS with some of my clients just because. And
sorry for me, because I'm ignorant.
Yeah.
What is IPS?
In-person sales.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah. So I will go to the family's home, or I'll meet with them on Zoom, and we'll go through the images together. And I just walk them through the options of what's there. I do send them a client guide before the shoot so that they can look through that and have an idea of what they want, whether they want digital products or matted prints or an album. But I think it's really hard if you've never worked with a documentary photographer before. It can be really difficult, I think, to have a comprehension of what all that means, or like why you would want an album for a day in the life. So especially for right now, while I'm still kind of in my building years here in Spokane, everything is purchased a la carte, so rather than packaging an album with every session, which I would like to move towards in the future. Right now, they can just buy it a la carte if that's something that they want. And then I talk them through the whole process, selling process, and what their options are, what kinds of products I sell. And then I use the slideshow as a way of just quickly showing them the images, and it's set to music, and it just helps them kind of get that emotional feel of the day and of the images, and helps them, I guess, to conceive of what's possible. So that's usually what those are for.
And is that like a web link, like they view it in a web browser, or how do they see the slideshow? Or is this stuff you're going to get to tomorrow? Should I notice your export has finished. I can stop derailing your session here.
So it just depends. Like if it's on Zoom, then I will show it to them over Zoom. I keep them in on a YouTube channel. So I can show you one of them right now if that helps. And but I also use Pixie Set for my gallery shares. So what you can do with Pixieset that's really cool is you can upload, instead of a cover photo, a cover video. And so they can play the video at the top of their gallery and then look through the images after that.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then would it help to look at what a finished slideshow looks like now, or we can wait?
I'm going to leave that up to you, actually. We have 10 minutes left today. So however, whatever you want to communicate to folks in those 10 minutes there.
Yeah, let me see what I've got that I think would be helpful to share. See, I've got an adoption video. I've got a morning in the life.
I think I should say I think we don't have audio.
I don't have the audio.
Maybe should we save this for tomorrow?
Yep.
I think we can get set up with audio from your computer for tomorrow. So.
Yep, that works. And then yeah, I just stopped the screen share. Should I share it back again? Yep.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. There it is.
There we go.
Now I see it again.
All right, so we can do that tomorrow. And then I can show you where the images for these have been saved. So it's created a JPEG file or folder. And so now all the images that we've done so far in batch run have been saved here. So 0243, okay, so I can go back into these and then keep doing that. And then what I like to do is just make sure that I've got the camera raw images, just in case you accidentally save any JPEGs into this folder. I like to make sure I select the camera raw images. And then since we've deselected some, then it helps to also make sure we grab just the ones that have been starred. So we'll just double check and make sure that everything has been, all the settings are the same, and then we'll run it again. So sometimes what I'll do is I will select all the images that I'm going to save for JPEG, and then I will run the entire thing and walk away and go do, go get something to drink or bathroom break. And then it takes maybe just 5 or 10 minutes for it to do all this.
Well, let me ask you, because you're not allowed to take a bathroom break right now.
Right.
Let me ask you, I was looking at your website last night, and you have just a ton of fantastic work on there, and lots of it is not the type of work you're showing us today. You have a huge range of stuff that you're doing. So you have this kind of people and family photography, but you also do food photography. You have a bunch of, I think, deeply personal projects on your website. You have some stuff that I would maybe call like kind of long form photojournalism. I'm just wondering, like, kind of how all of those different photographic interests influence each other, and do you have sort of a kind of a favorite genre or a type of photography that speaks to you the most?
I think it really depends. I have really embraced personal projects in the last couple of years as a way of doing work that is, I don't want to say more meaningful to me personally, because I find doc family work to be incredibly meaningful. But I get to, I think, play a lot more with personal projects, and then I can have a specific concept in mind or something that I really want to say. So I've done projects regarding gender and racism and identity, and those have been very fulfilling for me, because then I can hone in on what I really want to say with those things, and then create a project just around that. And then and that's not something that I can really do with doc family work. I think there's definitely ways to speak towards those issues with doc family work, but I think sometimes having the freedom to do other things, like one of my projects is done with Polaroid transfers, and then it was turned into a zine. It's just, I think there's definitely ways to do it with long form documentary, things like that. But there's also, I think, an abstraction that is really fun to play with.
And I noticed as well that some of your work on your website is paired with writing, what I would really call, I think it would be fair to call, poetry on your site. And I'm wondering kind of how you came to that, and how you kind of, I don't know, use the two together to play off of each other, your poetry and your photography.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how it started. I think I did a workshop with a friend, and she really pushed for kind of a visual poetry. And as I did that, it was like my brain only works in like certain ways. And in order to do the visual poetry, I really wanted to do written poetry. And that helped me kind of get to this place where I could do the visual poetry a little bit better. And so that kind of, I think, really kicked off this interest in writing more poetry. And then I think I did a couple of poems last year that it just kind of came to mind because of everything going on in terms of the racial reckoning and things going on in the world that I wanted to speak to in a different way. So then the written poems were kind of like my way of doing that. And then I photographed for those, if that makes sense. I feel very vague.
I think so.
Okay.
And then also, another thing I noticed on your site is you do teaching. So obviously you're doing this here today, but you also conduct workshops and teach other people how to do photography. And I'm just wondering what that's like for you, and how helping other people learn photography influences your own work and your own photography.
Yeah, I've done a couple of like beginner photography workshops for locals here, and then a couple of times doing mentorships for people. I think it'd be really interesting to get like a more comprehensive or like intermediate level type of mentorships for people. But it's been fun to do just because it reminds me of when I first started, and then that helps me kind of get into this mindset of like why I'm really in this. And so that's always, I think, a meaningful thing to reflect on, because sometimes when you get into the business of anything, you lose kind of a sense for what the whole reason you're in it. Because at some point you have to think a lot about income and profit and business expenditures, and all those numbers can really bog you down and lose sight of things. So it's nice working with people who are just getting into it and hearing like what it is that attracts them.
Well, we have 1 minute left. Is there any final thoughts or anything that you'd like to leave folks with today?
I can't think of anything right now.
Nope, no pressure.
Yeah. Maybe I'll sit on it and see if I have something to add tomorrow.
Okay, well, we were super fortunate today to have Margaret Albaugh with us, showing us her workflow for processing a day in the life family photography shoot, both picking the selects and editing photos in batch and ACR. So as you said, you'll be back with us tomorrow to show us your process for building a slideshow of these photos, of the edited photos in Premiere. Mm-hmm. Is that right? Okay.
Yep.
Fantastic. And so we will be back tomorrow at the same time, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. You can catch part 2 with us then. And stay tuned. Today, after this, we have the Illustrator Daily Creative Challenge replays. And then that is followed by a graphic design live stream with Heather Lynn. Margaret, thank you so much for joining us today. This was really fantastic, and I can't wait to be back with you tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. It was great.
And thanks to everybody who joined us on the stream today. Bye, guys. Bye, everyone.